time to fuel your business success. Welcome to Harmonious at Lunch. We're bringing you bite-sized advice and expert conversations to drive clarity and growth 5 days a week. Make sure you join our Facebook group at humanop.com/lunch, where listeners like you and our guests hang out so we can find harmony in business together. If you're building a business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. In today's episode, we got a good one. We're talking real estate investing, alternative income sources for you business owners and entrepreneurs who are super busy. You want to grow your income, you want to grow your business, but you don't have a lot of time. We're going to cover that. And I got a guest today who's been doing this for a long time, over 25 years. And when I told him that we're going to talk about this in 15 minutes, he laughed about me because he's got so much knowledge and he's going to pack it all into 15 minutes. Fuquan Bilal, welcome to the show. And thave you for being here.
It's awesome. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So it seems like we got to get right down to business here because you have a lot to talk about in a short amount of time. But this is an interesting topic because, as I mentioned, we have business owners, executives, entrepreneurs on this show or listening to this show. And you know, we can't learn how to invest necessarily in our spare time, but a lot of people do want to invest in real estate. So tell me how you kind of got started and when you learned this was a viable way for you to make more than the average income, so to speak.
Yeah. So for me, it was really looking at the future, and like most people do, right? When they get a job where you're running a company, either you have your solo 401k set up with your retirement plan for the future, or if you're working, you have your 401k set up. And most times it's not enough, right? You see the seniors bagging groceries, you see inflation is happening, and people are still working past retirement. So with that thought in mind, I had a family member of mine that was doing real estate, and I started to shadow them around, and I saw the opportunity and I took advantage of it and jumped out the window and grew wings falling down, as they say. It was tough because not having the knowledge, having to educate myself on it. And when I got to a point where I closed my first deal, which took about 6 months after I got in, I kind of left my job and made this a full-time thing. That way, all of the energy and effort that I was putting into someone else's company, I took it upon myself to take the leap of faith and invest in myself and educate myself. It wasn't easy. It was a tough journey. And I'm still here 26 years later. So just being around the right people and having the right network, I would say, would be the answer to your question to get started, right? You have meetups, you have so many different things now that we didn't have then. Education on YouTube, all information where someone can get educated to pull a trigger.
Yeah, I mean, it's great advice. And I think surrounding yourself with the right people is important in anything you do, first of all. But especially real estate, because it's a high dollar investment, if you will. And I think, or I would perceive that that's probably what holds a lot of people back. I think everyone and their mother has heard about real estate investing at this point, but the amount of people that actually go through and do it, and then the amount who are successful like yourself are so small. So when you talk to people, executives, business owners, what are the things that typically hold them back from pulling the trigger and actually investing in real estate?
Yeah, it's not for everyone. I think the biggest thing that hold people back is the education. I keep saying that, and that's going to be my theme, right? The more you're educated about something, the easier it becomes, right? So the more familiar you are with something, the easier it becomes. So the more due diligence you do and more education you do on what you're investing in, the easier it becomes. So I think the lack of education is what hold people back more than having the money, right? There's a lot of business owners who can, take that solo 401k or whatever they're building up and invest that into alternative assets, similar to what they do with their IRA account, invest those into alternative assets. People just go to the traditional investments, which is stocks, bonds, things that they are familiar with, right? And that's what they invest in. So going back to the question you asked, is just being more educated about the investment is what kind of brings the fear down.
All right, education. We're going to pound home education today then. That's the topic of today's episode.
Yeah.
I like it. So in that vein then, you have a fund. So you're not necessarily, well, maybe correct me on this. Do you also teach people just in general how to invest on their own, or do you mostly concentrate on on growing your fund so that you can go out and as a group invest in real estate.
Correct. So we provide education on the strategy that we have. And the goal is to get the people to know, like, and trust us in that order, right? So they get to know us by us providing that education, by us showing them, hey, this is what we do, and this is how we do it. This is how we underwrite the deal. This is how we mitigate risk. Here is some case studies of real deals that we actually did. Here is our track record. And someone can watch you and be a part of that nurturing process, if you will, for a year or two before they get to know, like, and trust you. Eventually, they'll take the leap of faith because now they're educated, they're familiar with your strategy, they're familiar with how you underwrite, how you do due diligence, and they may go, that's a little bit too much for me, but you seem like the person that's the expert in this field. So essentially what people are investing in is you, right? And that could be real estate, that could be anything, right? If you come to a friend with a business plan that have money and you want them to invest with you, they want to know that you're educated and that you know what you're doing and you have a proven concept before they invest in with you.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's even outside of that, when you buy something from a company, depending on what the purchase is, you're investing in that company and you have to make sure you like that person who you're doing business with. So that's business 101 right there. You said, I think this was before we started recording, you've been doing real estate for 26 years, but your fund for the last 12 or 13, if I recall
Yeah, we
correctly.
started our first fund in 2013.
Okay.
Before then, I would raise money from private individual investors, but I wanted to scale the business and I knew I had to do what's called pooled funds. So we had to hire an SEC attorney, consult with them, create an operating agreement, and then set up a fund. That allows us to buy on a larger scale and pool all the capital together. And when the investors invest in a fund, their capital is collateralized against all of the assets we have in the fund. And the way that works is they get monthly payments. There's a 3-year term. Depending on the amount they invest in, they can earn up anywhere from 9 to 13% annually, monthly payments, just depending on which class they go into. And the classes are determined about the amount of investment. It could be a $50,000 investment, $250,000 investment, or a $500,000 investment. Most new investors like to dip their toe in the water and go, let me give this guy $50,000 and kind of see how the communication is. Do they respond? How they report? And then after they get that relationship going with you, they usually invest more.
Yeah, that makes sense. So talk to me about that point though. 12 years ago, when you made this switch or the shift in your business model, because that's a huge thing, right? Because now you have the SEC involved. You have there's so many other regulations that you have to be aware of and really manage, because it's your reputation on the line. It's also your business on the line. Why did you go that route in terms of scaling rather than just continuing to do what you were already doing and already successful with?
Yeah, a funny story, and this is true. At this time in my real estate journey, I was doing a lot of short sales, and I had a negotiator offer for me to actually buy the loan. And I was like, how can I buy this loan? And my son, actually, I had picked him up from school and I was finishing a call when he got in the car and he overheard the call. And I was like, how do they want me to buy the loan? I can't buy the loan. It was a large loan. And my son said, I thought you can do anything you put your mind to. So it's like, true story. It's like, wow. So that got me to thinking, and I started to do some research, and I found out that you can create a vehicle like a real estate fund to pool capital from investors to be able to buy larger deals, right? Because at that time I had an investor that wanted to give me 100, 50, 25. I didn't have an investor that would just stroke a check for $500,000, $1 million. So usually the only way you do that is if you get a group of people to do that. And if you're borrowing from more than 2 people, it becomes a securities. And you need that type of vehicle, a fund, in order to raise capital. It's highly regulated. So you definitely want to consult with an SEC attorney to make sure that you do the proper filing and you follow the rules the way it's supposed to. But that was the beginning of a journey. It's like a whole nother business, raising capital. You're dealing with people retirements, you're dealing with people 401ks, IRAs, people life savings. So you want to make sure that you have a proven concept and you have skin in the game, that you're personally invested in the deal as well. That goes a long way.
Yeah, I assume we have Bernie Madoff to thank for that, for being so regulated.
Well, no, I mean, it was happening before then. I
Yeah.
can think of a story my SEC attorney told me it's called blue sky filing. I was like, why do they have a blue sky? And he was like, well, it was a story back in the day. A guy was selling land and he was selling the same piece of land to multiple people. That was a Ponzi, right? That happened hundreds of years ago, right? So these things keep going on and on. So this is why it's important to get educated, do the due diligence, make sure that the person you're investing in actually have the assets, right? That's the big part of it, that they actually have the assets and they follow the rules of the private placement. So, if people are investing in the stock market, especially now where the market is at, they're losing hundreds of millions of dollars. So you want to be in an alternative asset that is collateral backed. That's the key point.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a cool story with your son though. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, let's actually practice what we preach a little bit. You've
Yeah,
obviously said that to
yeah,
him
yeah, for sure.
hundreds of times,
Yeah,
it sounds
yeah,
like.
yeah. You can do anything you put your mind to it.
Yeah.
And you push back, and it was a moment of truth, and it gave me the opportunity to challenge myself to go to that next level. Because before then, it was a bunch of mom and pops that I would borrow money from, 50, 25, 100. And that gave me the opportunity to raise 60 million to date.
Yeah, that's incredible. So in that transition since then, what had to change in your business to make sure that you're in compliance, because that's probably one of the bigger issues, but then continue to operate smoothly and grow the business and continue to attract new investors. It's this whole cycle, of course, no different than any other business, but what have you really grown through in the last 12 years in doing this?
Well, I would say creating operational efficiency is really what stands out to me the most, because that was the biggest challenge, right? So the business is broken down into 4 parts. There's a great book on it. Is people, execution, strategy, and cash. And it's Rockefeller Habits 2.0. It's called Scaling Up. Any business owner, I would definitely say, to get the book Scaling Up is really good. Because those 4 parts of the business, whether you're doing real estate or anything, is what's going to get you to that next level, right? Pouring into your people, right? What are you doing? We have this thing that I learned from another book by Gino Wickman called EOS, and that teaches you processes and systems and building a rhythm, like weekly meetings with your top team members, creating an annual goal, quarterly goal. Then it's a 13-week march, right? So, and every week you have these level 10 meetings where you're going over if you're on track or off track with what you set for your quarterly goals, which we call rocks. But keeping that rhythm, staying on top of it, whether it's a people rock, whether you have incentives, bonuses, or something you're creating, whether it's a cash rock, if you're trying to sell assets or raise capital, like what are the targets there? What's your execution rock? And strategy, right? So everything starts from the strategy, then execution. But bringing structure to the business, I would say, have helped me, grow. And there's still so much to learn, right? You learn all of this and you go, wow, I don't know anything. But a lot of people, I was the type of guy I'm guilty of it, that would, shoot first and ask questions later, right? Just go out and just grind and go and do it, instead of taking a step back and systematically executing, right? Scaling to be better instead of bigger.
Yeah, that's a piece of wisdom right there. Better instead of bigger.
Mm-hmm.
That's so many people just think bigger is better, and you got to flip that. Just like you said, that's beautifully said. Your journey, though, your individual leadership journey, I'm sure took a few turns along the way as well. What was? Did you have a team prior to starting the fund?
I didn't. It was me and maybe 1 or 2 assistants.
Mm-hmm.
And I was out in the field managing the construction, doing all the flips. And then I decided, coming back from the market crash was really tough in '08, the GFC, the global financial crisis. So I started in '99 and I had a 9-year run before the GFC. So really picking my face up off the ground for 2 years, getting my life back in order, my personal life. And then that's kind of when I got into the note business. And fast forward from there into 2013 is when I started raising capital to buy paper from the banks. And then that transitioned into a more diverse strategy in 2017, buying more properties again. But for me, the leadership is masterminds, reading, just reading about all different types of how to become a better leader. And most of it is mindset, right? Most of it is mindset, being able to adapt in most environments. A lot of people who came through the GFC '08 who are still here in real estate, those are the people who stand the test of time. So when COVID came, it was like, oh, this is not as bad as it was then. Well, maybe it was for people who just got started in real estate during that time because things slowed down. But it was like, I had already saw the writing on the wall and already knew what to do and how to underwrite and how to buy during that time. So we did pretty good. And it's those lessons that you learn that helps you become who you are. So as a leader, I think that always being a student and always be willing to learn is important.
Yeah, that's a lot of wisdom there. I assume COVID for you, because you went through '08, '09, was more of a hiccup than anything else. That's the '08, '09 disaster that put a lot of people under.
And it lasted a long time.
Yeah, it was
lasted
many
a
years.
long
COVID
time,
was
yeah.
how long was real estate really affected in COVID? It was a couple months.
I would say maybe like 9 months,
Yeah,
if that. Before, when it bounced back hard.
Right.
Bounced back hard. I mean, I think we got shut down around March, and things were back into play. I would say like September, October, things were like back into play.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, it was crazy. The market was bananas for a minute.
It still kind of is, depending on where you are. I know.
Yeah.
Down here where I am, it's still bananas.
Yeah.
Writing's on the wall, but it's bananas.
Yeah, Northeast is doing pretty good too. Our medium home sale price is higher, 650. So we sell a lot of luxury spec homes, anywhere from $1.5 million to $2.5 million is our range where we tend to sell at. And then the Southeast and Georgia and Alabama is where we do our multifamily strategy. Providing quality, affordable housing for low income families.
Yeah, super cool. It's cool to hear your journey and your different, your outlook on things and the different way you attack the market, depending on just the time of the cycle it's in. So if somebody listening to the show, they want to explore, they've never done real estate, but they want to educate themselves and work with someone who knows what they're doing, where can they reach out and learn more about you?
You can go to my website, nngcapitalfund.com, and you can schedule a discovery call to learn a little bit more about what we do. I would love to talk to anybody who may catch this podcast and just learn a little bit more about your investment journey and see if I can help put you on the right track and educate you a little bit more about what we do.
Awesome. I love it. Fuquan, thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Wherever you're watching or listening, the link is down below in the show notes description. Go check that out if you're interested. If you want to make a little bit more money and not leverage your own time to do so, educate yourself. I highly recommend reaching out. Fuquan's a good guy. We'll see you on the next episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Thanks for being here.
Another episode of Harmonious at Lunch in the books. I hope this episode made you think and you grabbed some actionable ideas to propel your business. Don't forget to like, comment your takeaways, and subscribe wherever you're listening so we can help more entrepreneurs just like you achieve harmony in your life and business. For cutting